every time. So the best expectation, so it's like my daughter's a swimmer, and she's always about not so much beating the other person in the other lane, it's about beating her personal record, right? So your PR is your goal, not whether you came in first or third or fifth. It's about raising that expectation of experiences. And so as we see really cool apps, we say, wow, that was the right experience that you want. Now, voice is the natural user interface. We've all kind of grew up with it. It's the first thing you learn practically when you're a baby, right? So ultimately you learn how to talk and speak. We took this weird diversion around apps and buttons and passwords and all this computer stuff. So as an IBMer, I get to talk about, do you remember knobs and dials and then punch cards? And then we had these terminals and you typed, and then there were graphical user experiences with mice, and you had to move around a desktop. Well, all that kind of gotten away, right? It got better over time, right? GUIs are better than terminals, which were better than punch cards. But it certainly wasn't natural. And we all have kind of we've all lived through this. And now we've got apps. Well, they got an app for everything, which is somewhat frustrating. What users really want is they want a user and a service. Let me talk to it, make it do a thing. And that's what's going to be really interesting over the next 5 years, because we just spent the last 100 years of user experience kind of going in a diversion. I think we're finally coming to the point with natural language, with voice interfaces, that you can start to really do some cool stuff. So I'm a Trekkie, and I just binge watched a couple of seasons of all of Star Trek, and like hundreds of episodes. And you, at the very beginning, they had just a little lapel pin, and you tap the lapel pin, and then you talk to the Enterprise. And then eventually, they didn't even have to tap the lapel pin, so the gesture thing was pretty cool. I'm like, oh, that's awesome, I need to build one. And so we're going to, out at Think conference at the end of March, I'm going to build a little lapel pin. We can't call it the Star Trek, we're going to call it the Watson communicator instead. And you're going to tap it and wake it up and speak. So it has a little microphone from the little sensor tile. We're going to use an ST microelectronics device. It's going to talk Bluetooth to your phone to the cloud, and do natural language. So voice becomes really important. But then later on in those episodes of Star Trek, they don't even tap a thing. They just say computer, and then a command, right? So there's a wake word. They figured out a wake word about 30 years ago in Star Trek. So if you want to know what the future looks like, just watch Star Trek, because we're all trying to make that become real. So it's going to be exciting over the next 5 years. So what consumers want is they want to interact with a set of cognitive services to deliver outcomes. They don't want to perform isolated tasks. And businesses want to engage that consumer in a set of brand experiences that help them do the task, right? Keep them within the brand. Don't let them wander away, and hopefully they come back. Because when they wander away, they might not come back. So if you can build a brand experience, natural language, chatbot, services, and hide all the complexity, you build a great brand experience, and that's what adds value for your product. Okay? So in a typical family home, maybe I'm very much a nerd, and I'm an IoT guy. I don't yet have 500, but I think I've got about 90 devices in my house. When I turn on my Wi-Fi, I get all these IP addresses. There's smoke alarms, and there's every room's got a few power plugs and light switches. My TV, there's the stereo system and the speakers, and then the kitchen is all instrumented, and I control my Christmas lights, blah blah blah. Well, there's an app for each one of those things, and I used to just get up and press a button and the lights would go on, and now I'm like, oh, let me start the app and do all these things. I'm like, oh my God, why is this better? Yeah, it's fun to have an app to control the thing, but it's certainly not easy. And so these isolated silos of applications today, you launch an app, you do a thing, you're like, the kids think that I'm a nerd. And so what you really need to do is start to build experiences horizontally across your all of these devices. So you start to control the natural experience. You walk into the room, it knows who you are and it learns your preferences. It knows what type of music I like. It knows what type of music my children like. And you can very simply, without pressing buttons or giving commands, trying to remember what the wake word is, and the instruction would be to launch a task or a skill, it becomes much more natural. And that's where we want to head. So IBM is starting to wire some of these things together. So that the technologies, we've all seen them coming, right? So speech to text and text to speech, natural language understanding, conversation, dialogue, chatbots. You start to wire them to IoT, right? And then controlling IoT devices using IFT and Samsung Smart Things, and go down this long list of platforms you might have in your house with Philips Hue and so forth. So you have all these hubs. You want these hubs to work together. And so IBM's got great partnerships. We have a set of cognitive services we talked about. And now we're starting to build on top of each other because they're composable APIs. And those composable APIs start to tell stories that become really natural, that are different from just doing a siloed task. So you can start to, I'm going to turn on the laser pointer, there we go. Go back. Now I turned it off. There it is. So you're going to listen for the IoT device. Many of you have Alexa. How many of you have an Alexa or a Google Home or no one has a HomePod yet, but soon, right? So you have all these interactive devices, and you have to remember a wake word and then some type of command structure to wake them up. And you want to actually, who remembers all the commands to do a skill, right? My kids know like 3 of them. I think I've memorized about 7, and that's about it. I've tried a lot of them, and I use them once, and then I forget, how did I do that? I don't remember. So what we're trying to do here is choose a skill, but actually choose a skill based on context. So you don't have to name your skill, it just routes the request and figures out which skill your context applies to, based on the natural language understanding. And then, so you choose the skill, and you understand what the context is, and you delight your customer, and then you continue on, and you hopefully are making cognitive recommendations to make that experience even better over time. So you learn about each person and how they personalize their use of the device. And the other important thing is that it's always private. You keep the data private to the person and to the brand that you want to build. So there's a whole bunch of skills. So same thing as similar technologies here. So we've got interest, and this is a chat capability around interacting with places. There's instrumentation of a thing, so it's connected cars. Now IBM's not going to be building any connected cars, but we're going to be inside of cars in all sorts of interesting ways. So understanding vehicle data and interacting through natural language, which is really fun. I'm a huge accessibility advocate, and we used to think about it from those that were disabled, and that's not really the case. When you're driving a car, you are disabled, right? You're situationally disabled because you can't, your eyes need to be on the road, they can't be wandering away. Your hands need to be on the wheel, so you're not physically moving and pressing buttons, hopefully. So situationally, accessibility becomes really important. And so understanding how we interact in the vehicle is going to be important in the future. All right, so why would IBM invest and build a Watson assistant? Is because our customers are asking for this, and we want to help our customers. So our customers are we're really not a consumer brand, though you may know of us from our history. We sell to major customers, and our major customers are now building really fun applications on top of AI. We also have this whole set of context and data, so data becomes really important. And owning that customer experience, we talked about brand, you'll hear from Angel in a couple of minutes about the brand experience of how to interact with and delight a customer. And we know that IBM's not going to be making these devices, so there's going to be a lot of third-party devices. So interacting and engaging with them is going to be really important there too. So brand loyalty is something that's going to be important. Whoa. Let me try again. I got excited about the clicker. There we go. All right, so we're really going after three major ones first, and you may start to see this surface in lots of interesting places now. So Watson Assistant for automotive, Watson Assistant for hospitality, and then retail. And as a matter of fact, you probably will never hear the word, unlike Siri or Google Home, you won't actually hear the word Watson Assistant. The brand experience will be OnStar. The brand experience will be that hotel concierge that you interact with. And underneath it would be a Watson Assistant. Maybe you might see a logo, you might not ever see a logo, we don't care. So it's a whole set of foundational skills and then a bunch of verticals. And so we're working with some major car companies to make that user experience in a car really cognitive as well. Same thing with hospitality. So in your hotel room, you start to interact and you build that hotel room of the future. We've started to build hotel rooms of the future with a number of the major hotel chains. Watson Assistant for the workplace. So driving through IFT and SmartThings, whole set of tasks. How it works, there's a skills routing engine and a whole bunch of skills. You can build skills. And then there's agents, and the agents talk to control real things in a real world. You can use, obviously, IoT platform, big part of this. Then all the Watson Cloud and the Watson Cognitive Services to get tied together. Cloud Functions was the open source, open WISC thing. So what happens is we've taken all these capabilities and actually built a giant product because teams want to do that, and we did it with them and for them. It's going to be called Watson Assistant. So and then you come and you buy it, right? Your car company, your hotel company would have these edge devices, and then you use the IBM Cloud, a bunch of cognitive services, or on a data platform, and then you can build your own assistants. And I want to show you, and you can join the beta program. There's some, so you get an API key, and you can start to build. And I'm going to jump out of this demo here, and then just show you that we have on the web a whole set of docs and how to get started. So as a developer advocate, I want you to start to build something. So you can request an API key. You can read the docs, which are pretty clever. Show you how to do it, right? There's a sample. You build your first one. It's pretty easy. How to build your first skill. And there's a REST API that you can start. How many developers are in the audience? Good, yeah. So if you want to start to build a skill with Watson Assistant, after you give us the API key, there's a whole GitHub behind this as well. So you go and grab you can clone the GitHub URL, and all the documentation is to build. This is the boilerplate, and you can build your first one in a couple of minutes. And that was awesome. I think I did that. And so there's a console, so you can start to interact with your thing as well, and you can actually start to play with your skills. So we started to put this together and make the developer experience very easy. Not only is the brand experience, we're going to turn it over to Angel, I think is, right? How are we doing for time? Take some Q&A?
Yeah, take some.
And then So kind of in here. So that's sort of the background of where Watson Assistant is now and where it's going in terms of, you can engage with the beta program and start to experiment with Watson Assistant skills. But the idea of actually talking with natural language understanding and hiding the complexity of apps and commands becomes really compelling. And so the world where I can just tap a thing or not even tap a thing and just say, computer, make me some Earl Grey tea hot, is going to be really awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Or for me, it's actually really cold beer as opposed to Earl Grey tea. So questions. Do we have any skills now? Health services. So that's an interesting question because health is such a regulated industry. We carved out part of the IBM cloud. And it's actually called Watson Watson Health Platform, which is all HIPAA compliant. And, it's got a whole set of documentation around complying with patient data. And then using the patient data in a secure way to interact. So because we don't want to leak that patient data anywhere else. So yeah, if you want to come talk to me about Watson Health Platform, it's actually a huge brand for us too. So we're helping major medical institutes mine for oncology and tumors and visual recognition and amazing stuff. Watson as a doctor's assistant.
I'm curious, this is probably a rabbit hole of a topic, but you talked about not having Watson or any kind of brand be like the named personality that you interact with, as opposed to say Alexa or Hey Google or whatever else. It seems like some of the use cases you're presenting are competing directly against a lot of the use cases that these other competitors are kind of talking about. How do you
So,
can you repeat the question for everyone?
What's that? So let me see if I can paraphrase the question. So the question is, when is the brand owning the experience versus the more generic experiences that you can buy today, right? So that brand, it becomes actually important. So if you're OnStar, they've built this huge brand about how to make their car service experience. They've been at it for 10 years, and they're adding now cognitive things to that brand. Or if you're the hotel, you want to improve that customer loyalty, and you don't want them to wander away and maybe come back. So that brand loyalty becomes really important. And so you can start to build situational chatbots and voice assistants that are customized for the hotel room. And I think, Angel, you're going to hit a few of those topics around brand loyalty. Yeah, so brand loyalty is an Angel thing. Awesome. Question here.
Do you envision that your customers could be developing these tools themselves using your APIs, or do you provide some kind of professional services?
So the APIs and developer experience is about, so the question is whether the expectation is that a developer would just build their own skills or whether we're going to build professional services. So the answer is both. We want to make it so self-service that you as a developer can pick this up and build your own skills. And if you're a customer of ours, we obviously be happy to help you with professional services. IBM's got lots of consultants that come and do wonderful things. But that's not the only way that you would bring this to market. You could easily, as a developer, start with the GitHub, the sample code, and a bunch of if devices, and just, I had my lights blinking in about 2 hours.
What would you say you found surprising, like doing this kind of multi-hop integration across devices and if and API things? Like, what was a gotcha or something surprising for you?
So the question is, where are the gotchas when you start to string together all of these multi-hop things? And so first, the wow moment of making it work You're like, woo, that was really cool. Sorry if I scared you. But then the tricky part is sometimes latencies. Sometimes the tricky part is getting all the API keys wired in the right places. But then you ultimately you tune on to reduce the latencies, and that's the tricky part. I think that's the hardest part is you don't want to speak and then wait 2 seconds. You want to be able to speak and within a second have the thing happen. There's a Darby Threshold. I don't know if you're familiar. So there was a researcher in Yorktown Heights up at IBM researching, wonderful mentor of mine. He postulated that in a user experience, about 200 milliseconds is the threshold for which a user will wait. And he was doing this on terminals because we were watching terminals and people would start to bang the return key if they had to wait for too long. And so it's called the Darby Threshold. And so if you ever want to Google about that, it's actually psychology and computer systems and making sure you get that latency within limits. I'll take one more cut. How many time? One more. Right here.
Thank you. With regards to how many Internet of Things products are going to be in people's houses now, and with some of the services that are already there, privacy starts to become an issue for the individual consumer. I know you mentioned like Hippocratic compliance, AI. Can you talk a little bit further about any kind of like what kind of privacy securities Watson has?
So the IBM platform is secure at its core. We built our entire cloud platforms from the bottom up with security in mind. We also know that, with the upcoming changes in European, I don't know if Europeans are here, but the GDPR, thank you, GDPR becomes really important about how we use your data and what we collect. And so I think the exposure of the light of day of how we're using your data becomes really important. IBM is obviously helping our clients comply with all the regulatory regime that's coming. It's a pretty hefty fines if you get it wrong. And so I think good, let's force the issue with regulatory change. But overall, we're going to care about this in the long term because all of these devices, as they start to collect data about us, we need to understand what they're going to do with that data. Okay, so thank you, Alex. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
My name's Angel. I work at Dexter, run Dexter.com. I'm a technical product manager there. So a little bit about Dexter. We are a platform that lets brands, businesses, and agencies create chatbots on top of us, as well as we offer an internal creative agency arm called Dexter Labs, where we help agencies come up with their own skills and help them through that crafting process, as well as any custom development and management activation. So the way we differentiate ourselves from existing chatbot platforms out there is that we take more of a writing-first model when it comes to creating chatbots. We believe that most chatbot platforms out there do follow this sort of call-response ideology, and that's why we sort of extend ourselves to voice as well. It's very similar to call-response as well. But one of the reasons why we believe writing first is the way to go is because we let you really create more in-depth, non-tree, like tree-type experiences, and you can really go scale and write similar to how a copywriter who would be creating the actual content for these kind of experiences would be writing. So you don't really need to be knee-deep in the code in order to create a really quick, fast experience. So I'm here today to talk about voice and my experiences within Dexter Labs as the lead engineer. My day-to-day is creating these bots and skills for our clients. When I talk about voice, I'm talking specifically about my work with Alexa and Google Home. So we do have a public platform that you can, for anyone who's interested, you can create an Alexa skill on our public platform. But Google Home is more of a internal, not fully public yet. And then, so why do we build for voice? So you've heard the spiel before. It's easy, it's fast, it's fun. You have a lot less friction when it comes to invoking a specific action that you want to perform. The hardware is becoming a lot more commonplace. The numbers now are like 20 million Alexa devices are sold. And we're really starting to see that text-to-speech is improving, as well as the fact that AI is getting better so that we can perform better recommendations. But when I talk about why brands want to build for voice, it's because they just want to get first to market. They want to put their name on top of a specific functionality. So when they want to be the skill for soup recipes, or the skill for alcohol, or the skill for fitness, right? So getting first there is really important for brands. Today my talk is mainly focused on why I would gear a specific brand to build for a platform, a specific medium. Two mediums I'm talking about are messaging over chat versus messaging over voice. I am a little more biased towards messaging for text for certain reasons, but I offer different reasons for why you might want to build for voice. So. With text, you do have a conversational history. You know the context of the conversation before. A person can come back and revisit the conversation. There is sort of that like ability to have an asynchronous conversation where you're not glued and tied to the device. So of course, devices are plugged in. They're in their house. So when you're thinking about building a project for your brand, you have to think about where your user is going to be finding your device. For messaging, it's easier for the bot, the skill, to take your input in because text is a little more standardized than the variations that come with accents. So understanding who your audience is and whether there is variations in how they offer their user input. Visual elements do allow for smoother navigation through your messaging. So when I work with brands, when I think about like what assets they already have, whether we can translate those exactly straight through to messaging, and obviously for voice, we're starting to see a lot more of echo show, but I don't really think we're there yet. So if we do have visual elements, how can we include them within our messaging experiences? One big thing I push for a lot of my clients is re-engagement, which is huge within messaging, but isn't quite there yet for voice. I know we're getting a lot of talk about maybe we're going to see a little green light on our Alexa device, or like a little shining circle for Google Home to let you know that you have push notifications on your individual skills and actions. But it's very smooth, it's very easy on messaging, so push notifications are huge for us. Whenever we create a brand experience, we do think about how we can do re-engagement. And that's also actually a really important KPI that we find for our brands. They really want to know how they can re-engage their existing users. And then accessibility. I think the big thing for messaging is everyone has a phone. Everyone has an accessible medium to get to messaging, but for smart speakers, for home devices, we haven't really gotten to everyone being there yet. So when you're creating a new bot experience, brand experience, you have to think about who is the audience you're trying to capture? Is the audience that you're building your brand experience for the same audience that would align with your voice device? But then again, with voice, we have, it's amazing, like hands-free communication. I think John talked to this about how now you're starting to enter spaces where you can take the user's attention. So like with driving, now originally you couldn't text and drive at the same time. You can't be on a messenger experience at the same time, but now with voice, you can start interjecting yourself into parts of the user's day where they haven't had voice or haven't had bots interjected in before, essentially. I think one thing that's a huge advantage for voice personally is discovery. I do think that the voice platforms, the Google and Alexa discovery is better than the Messenger and the other Twitter kick. Like, I don't really think they're putting as much effort into pushing out bots and encouraging users to discover them. I think as a smart home user, you are more likely to be active and try to find a skill on your own. But I also do think that when you're trying to find a skill, you're not necessarily trying to find a branded skill. You're trying to find functionality, and then you find the skill associated with that functionality. It happens to be the branded functionality. So when we typically build for messaging, we typically find that a lot of our audiences for messaging tend to come from the initial audience on the platform, as well as the advertising spend that you can put against that messaging experience. So I offered a couple of suggestions for why I would choose one medium over other, depending on whether you have an audience on the medium already. But the question is, do we actually need it for both? And I would say yes, why not? Build on both because you're reaching your audience in multiple mediums, but can we actually build the same experience on both? And I think we're all in agreement that you shouldn't be porting over the exact same experience from both text and voice. You should be catering your experience to match the medium itself. But I think one of the main points for why it's beneficial to have both text and voice be different experiences is because you can have a user be on the phone and also have a smart home speaker at home, and then they can re-engage your brand with two different like wow moments, right? So the first time they interact in chat and the first time they interact on voice can be two wildly different experiences. When is it okay to port over an exact same existing bot? And I think the kind of bots that could live on both types of mediums exactly the same tend to be the kind of bots that are short utility type driven bots or the single term type drops. So these kind of bot projects tend to be like jokes, rather short, individual, quick to the point, get your information, as opposed to conversational, which I feel like lends itself better to the asynchronous part of text conversations, where you don't necessarily need to be glued to the device. When you think about crafting project ideas, one important thing I really like to stress is location, especially for voice. Where is your user experiencing your voice skill? Are they in the kitchen? Are they in the living room? Think about like where these specific voice devices live and how you can craft your experience around that location. I know the office is a big one. Alexa is really trying to push for Alexa for Business. So if you're thinking about that, how should you craft it for that? Similarly, where's your audience live? So if your audience for a brand is teenagers, maybe you want to build for Kick. If your brand audience is employees, then build for Slack. So being cognizant of where your audience actually lives and not pushing them towards a platform that isn't true to them. Scripting best practices. So we spent a lot of time thinking about scripting in Dexter because we spend a lot of time trying to improve upon our scripts. Being concise with being concise with voice, especially with text being a little more wordy. We have text bots that are almost like narratives and like storytelling driven, right? With voice, we tend to be a little more concise. We choose vocabulary that's smaller. A lot of voice skills tend to be prompting for information. So when you're prompting for information, be cognizant of the cognitive load that a user can have. So like you don't try to offer too many types of options for them to move on with. Typically I kind of stick around 3 max, but that's my personal touch. Variation is key. I think that's a huge thing that we recommend to all of our users on our platform. That make sure you have variation in your responses. I can't think of how many times we've had people just in user testing who are frustrated whenever they hear the same, sorry, I don't understand that. Being cognizant of how frustrating that can be, especially over voice, because that phrase gets really long. And being context aware about where you are within the user flow and offering back feedback and variation that's relative to that part of the flow. And then one more quick point about error management. When you hit an error, I think the biggest thing for chatbot developers, errors are inevitable. So being aware of sending back hints, guidance, especially with Alexa, sometimes we offer guidance that's like, at this point, after they've hit this catch-all 3 or 4 times, we tell them to straight up say, do you mean to say, I want to go to this, right? So like, if you need to bring them back to the guardrails, and just, you can do that. I think the last point I want to make on this slide is top-level menus. So especially on Alexa, you'll find that when people talk with voice, they'll get distracted, and you don't want to hold them to a specific topic. So having a general menu where you can sort of direct people to different parts within your flow. So they don't necessarily, they'll have to finish the existing branch of their tree before they move on to a different part. Okay. All right. So how handle when voice falters? There are certain parts where voice isn't the best at yet. So I think a couple of key things I want to bring up here is understanding context of where your user is. So if they haven't fully completed a skill, they're like mid-interaction, how can you re-engage them? Keeping track of their state, so when they reopen a specific skill or an action, you know where they are at, and you can like guide them to continue that action, or maybe you can ask them if they want to restart their action. Using companion platforms, so we've had a couple of users ask us how they can battle Alexa's non-visual aspect, right? So thinking about how you can tie in Alexa with the in-app Alexa, the Alexa app on your phone, as well as maybe asking them for your phone number. And then brands love this because not only do they have an Alexa device, but now they start tying that number to individual users' phone numbers, and they get more information. And then the last bit of advice I wanted to give was about taking advantage of medium. People come to voice skills to experience the voice, of being cognizant of the fact that you want to make use of the speech syntax, make use of embedded audio. Maybe you want to build a skill entirely around audio files only. And within text, making sure you make use of push notifications, right? So your medium isn't just a way to communicate information, but there's also additional advantages to being on a specific medium, and you should be cognizant of what you can do to push that. Okay. So that's it. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Do you have one example you can show us your product? I mean, if it's not confidential, can you share?
So I mean, for Alexa, for voice, we're doing a lot of things with. We actually have a couple like alcohol-based clients right now. So for some reason, it's really popular. Everyone wants their own variant on the recipe API. So being aware of what you can take from existing resources the client has, and putting them and building like voice experiences around them that are actually useful to a user. So that's one of the big ones we're working on right now. We've had in the past, we've worked with things like fitness, diaper subscription. I've worked on a really interesting gaming one recently. So one that was around, it was just sort of like a conversation back and forth, and you can level up. So there's a lot of different use cases, I think, for voice out there, but they're, for the most part, the ones that I felt like were fairly successful tended to be utility or single-term, one-off conversations as opposed to long-term conversations.
Thank you.
So speaking of that, do either Alexa or Google Home support multi-turns conversation? Like with pronouns, like I asked about certain person, then refer to him as him, and the agent will understand what I'm saying?
Is the question about capturing data about the user?
No, I'm saying, so imagine I would ask, there's a skill where I can ask about whatever, the President of the United States, and then I can ask a follow-up question and then refer to him as him, right? Did he, or what was his? So does either Alexa skill or Google Home support that?
It really depends. So when I'm referring to an Alexa skill or a Google Home action, it's more about the individual experience that a brand wants to build on top of those platforms, not necessarily making use of the smart assistant underlaying. Of course, you can tie in external NLP services on top and call those services to figure out important key entities within what the user says to redirect your response. But that is making use of external APIs to do that.
Okay, so just to refine, so you won't have to prefix your query with Hey Google or Alexa every time, or would you?
So each of these brand experiences are when you invoke a skill on the platform. So it's like, Hey Google, open up Campbell. Hey Google, Alexa, open liquor store, right? So like it's asking the skill to open, and then once you get into that individual experience, then the bot prompts back some more conversation, and it's just a dialogue, and then you close that experience.
Okay, thank you.
Do you see a big challenge with the whole onboarding process of skill, account linking and all that stuff? Because I know there's a lot of users that don't really understand. They would enable a skill, but they really don't know how to get past the next stage.
Yeah, definitely. I think the biggest thing, account linking, there's a lot of friction there. People aren't used to linking their accounts within the app, and when they get to that point, they don't want to sometimes. So sometimes when we have brands that want to have that account linking experience, we also recommend that they build a separate flow a flow where they can experience the skill that doesn't really require needing account linking.
And you can't really do a lot of things that are related to their account.
Yeah, so things that are more like general public information as opposed to individual user information.
But you haven't found any like workarounds using text or any of those things to make that process easier? Yeah.
I guess theoretically you could like text them and have them do account linking on a separate platform. Like people don't really know. I feel like when we ask them to open their Alexa app, that's like like additional thing we have to remind them to do, because that's not like a built-in intuitive behavior yet.
Are you using voice for identification, authentication?
No, we aren't. Not yet.
Can you talk about how you approach testing at different phases of creating different skills?
So the brands that we work with tend to be fairly large, so we're lucky in that we do have some beta audiences to test on the skill and like get that sort of initial feedback for where there's friction and how we can redefine the experience. We do make use of external bot analytics, so you can send your messages over to somewhere else and like get like aggregate data on like where they might have gotten stuck, like whenever you hit a specific like catch-all part, where can you get those messages? In general, it's all about like being cognizant of like which users are not finishing a flow and like where the most holdup is. So we do keep track of like topics of where users are getting stuck.
For the voice, do you only use Alexa and Google Home, or you use anything else?
Those are only two ones that I've personally experienced.
How much time do you guys spend researching before and probably during the usability part in your process?
So for our brand specifically, we do a lot of working sessions where we talk about what the brand wants to build, who their audience is for, what their personal experiences are for voice, and what has and hasn't worked for them. So we do have working sessions for brands that work with Dexter Labs, but individually for a lot of our self-service platform users on the platform, it's all about keeping track of the messages that come in, and then they do usability after it's launched.
And then after it's launched, do you keep track of like the behaviors as well, or probably it's not really felt different?
It depends on the engagement and how long we're with that specific brand. But some of them like to launch into the world. Some of them we stick with them and continue to iterate on the experience. Last question.
How long's a typical rollout? So if I was a brand and I wanted to interact with Dexter and I wanted to be live, how long does that usually take?
So for our platform, it's fairly easy to prototype and like get out a really quick thing. Like for us, we could probably spin out something in like 30 minutes, a fully fleshed product. But then there's like thinking about how we can push it to the next level, right? So there's a lot of custom builds, and then like there's the research around how to build that, and everyone wants to be innovative. So there's thinking about tying in other third-party APIs that we can make that brand experience better. So that back and forth and that constant iteration will take a couple of weeks.
Okay, so less than an hour for like a prototype to get a sense of what to do. And then
Like a hello world on this will take 5 minutes, 3 minutes. Take me 10 seconds.
All right.
If you have any questions, angel@rundexter.com. Check us out at rundexter.com.